Hey, this is Chris, keeping it real. How you doing? On my way to Lowe's this morning. I'm going to pick up some PVC pipe because I'm going to make something for my granddaughter Savannah. It's her first birthday was actually last Thursday, but the birthday party is going to be this Saturday, and so I'm going to make her a water table. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm on my way to go get the PVC pipe. I was going to do it out of wood, but then Lee showed me some plans for a PVC one, and I thought, well, that is so much easier. It'll go together a lot faster, and then I'm going to paint it up when I get done, and so it's going to look really good. And so, hey, that's the project for today. We will be back after we've gathered material and are back home and are ready to cut. Okay, sticker shock time. $54 later. What does $54 get you in terms of PVC? Well, I got some 1-inch PVC. I got two 10-foot pieces of 1-inch, and schedule 40. Obviously, you do not want to use cheap stuff. It might break, and then that could be bad. So you have your schedule 40. I'm going to make sure this fits. Before I go, it looks great. Okay, everything's fine. So we got two 10-foot pieces of 1-inch schedule 40 pipe. We've got 8 of these handy dandy 3-way fittings. I don't know in the real world who uses these for anything. I've never seen them used anywhere, but so got 8 of those. Let's see here, got 1, 2, 3, 6 of these T's and 4 elbows. And you'll see how they all go together. I also got some primer. And of course, what color does this need to be for the princess? Nothing will do but pink. Okay, so I think that's it. So $54. Wow, and that doesn't include the glue. Fortunately, I have some glue because the glue is $8. Sheesh. I'll tell you what, people are getting proud of their stuff, aren't they? All right, see you when we get home. So first of all, let's look at our container and see how big it actually is. We want to make sure that we make the PVC support big enough for this to fit down into. And so if we look at that, we see we've got about 22 and 13. Gosh, I hate the sun. I don't hate the sun. Let me try it this way, so my shadow is not in the way. So we have just a tad more than 22 and 3/4. It's hard not to pull that. So it is 22 and 3/4 by, at the widest point, 16 and 1/4. So 22 and 3/4 is the dimension that we need. Okay, so this is the piece that's going to make all the corners. And what I wanted you to see is that if you look down the throat of that, you can see that little ridge. That first little ridge, not the second one down there, but the very first one. That is that. I cannot get the sun, I cannot get my shadow out of the way. It is, hold on, so ridiculous. Okay. It's always going to be in the way. I cannot win. Anyway, take my word for it, that's 15/16 of an inch down into that throat. In other words, that pipe right there, the end of that pipe, will fit a 15/16, almost an inch, down into that fitting. That's not quite so important as it is to figure out how far this is from that. And so that is, excuse the tape measure, it is about 7/8. I hope if I can hold still enough. It's about 7/8. So in order to compensate for the pipe, well, in order to, you know, this can get really complicated really quick, and unfortunately we do not need like this tight, super tight fitting deal going on, because you also have to take into account the width of the wall of the pipe, which is about 1/8 of an inch. Oops, about 1/8 of an inch. And so, all things being equal, I've calculated that in order to get a 23 and 13/16 opening, which is what I thought I just said. Just check that again. Make sure that's going to be 23 and 13/16. 22, excuse me, and 13/16. So 22 and 13/16 plus a 1/16, because the pipe is going to go in a 1/16 more than this outside dimension. But then we can take off 1/8. I mean, if you really want to get technical about it, right? So really 22 and 13/16. It could be the ultimate tight dimension would be therefore 22 3/4, but I'm going to go ahead and make it 22 7/8 to give us just a little bit of slack. So when we set this, and you'll see it, you know, when we get the frame built. So the end of this end will be about 1/8 or 1/16 away from the PVC pipe that's going to be coming out of here. So 22 7/8 is what we're going to go for. If it doesn't work, then I'll explain why it didn't work, but I think it'll be okay. So 22 7/8. Here we go. I'm going to cut it with my saw. Very handy to have one of these. If you got a couple $100 extra to spend and you do any kind of cutting at all that requires, you know, absolute 90-degree this or that, or 45-degree this or that, it's invaluable. Okay, so I've cut the piece. And now you should see what the interior dimension is right here. And as you can see, it is, if I can get out of the sun again, it is 22 and 13/16, which is exactly the size of our container there. But if you'll notice, if you look where the pipe goes in there, there is 1/8 of an inch extra and 1/8 of an inch extra. And so that object is going to fit long ways. So what have we learned here? What we've learned here is to make this, what you need to do is measure your container and add not even 1/8 of an inch to it, about a 1/16 of an inch, and it will come out just right. Okay, I'm not trying to be convoluted here. I hope everybody is following along. And if you can't, it's probably because I'm not explaining it well enough, and not because you're not smart enough to understand it. All right. One thing I did want you to see, now this is going to tighten up a little bit, because as you can see, the end of the pipe isn't quite to that ridge, right? And I'm sure it's pretty much the same way on the other side. No, that one's pretty tight. But what's going to happen is when you put the cement, you put the primer and the cement on there, it acts as a lubricant, and so you're going to be able to bottom that pipe out into the fitting. And so we're still going to have about 1/8 of an inch play, which is about what I wanted. So the rule of thumb, therefore, is to add about a 1/16 or maybe 1/8 to whatever the dimension, the greatest dimension. As you can see, this is not actually perfectly rectangular. It's got a little bulge in the middle of each side. And so you have to take that, but you have to take the maximum dimension and add either 1/8, a 1/16 or 1/8 to cut the actual piece of PVC with. And then you can arrive at, well, that's how you figure out how long to cut the PVC pipe. And then once you glue it up, you're going to have about 1/8 of an inch play overall for this container to fit down into the frame. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, so here it is. It just wanted to show you that it actually does fit. Okay. How about that? I forgot to mention that once you get the first one cut and you're happy with your overall length and it works with your container, then you will need 4 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 3 more pieces at the same length as this original one, which was 22 and 7. Oh, here we go. 22 and 7/8. Got those 4 cut. Now what I need to do is cut 4. Well, it is really hot out here all of a sudden. Sorry for the shaky cam. We've cut our 4 at 22 and 7/8, and so let's just review. Our maximum width here is about 16 and 5/16. So the rule is what? It is to cut it a 16th or an 1/8 bigger. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these 4 at 16 and 3/8. And then comes the moment of truth. Okay, I don't have this all the way built yet, but I just wanted you to see that this tub does fit within. Oh my gosh, the sun is just, okay, shadows, I mean, not the sun. You can see that it fits within the boundary of the PVC. So you've got just a tad bit of play, but not very much, which is exactly what we wanted. So the rule of thumb holds. Take the size of your container and cut the PVC pipe a 16th or an 1/8. If you want a little bit more play, you can cut it for some more play if you'd like, but that will work. That's like the bare minimum. If we cut it much shorter, it'd be really tight, and you want it to be easy to get that tub in and out of there. So there you go. Now we are going to cut the height. Savannah is about 2 feet tall. So I'm thinking I'm going to cut the vertical pieces about 12 inches. The nice thing about this, and you'll see it when we get it together, if you want to raise it later, it's no big deal to cut the vertical pieces and add a coupling and a little bit more pipe to it. So this is going to be something that she's going to be able to play with for several years. And so, for $50, it needs to be designed that way, right? All right. Let's get the whole frame together, and I'll show you let's get the whole frame together, and then I'll show you the support that's going to hold this tub up. Okay, so we've got everything together. Now it's time to put in the support system, which is going to consist of 2 PVC, well, I don't know what you call them, hangers, brackets. We're going to come in, like this is the total length, the center line here, center line here. We're going to come from that center line 1/3 of the total distance, and then another 1/3, and then we're going to put in these T's. Now the T, let's think about this for a second. We already know that from there to there is 15/16, and so therefore we also know that from there to there is 15/16. And so what we're trying to figure out is how much at each junction. Let's just assume that's 1/3. How much on either side of that are we going to have to cut out? So if that's 15/16, the other side is 15/16. The total length is 3 3/8. So I've already done a little math here. Can you see that? Hope you can. So got 3 3/8 minus 15/16 times 2, which is 30/16, which is 1 7/8. So 3 3/8 minus 1 7/8 equals, and we'll do a little creative math here, so that's 11/8, and that's 2, and so that's 1 4/8, which equals, of course, 1 1/2 inches. So from the center line and divide that in half, right? Because we are going to be cutting on either side of this line, this way and this way, to meet those ridges, right? To meet this ridge right here and the other ridge right there. And so 1.5 divided by 2 then. So we will come here from our third of the way mark, and this is not the third of the way mark, and we'll go 3/4 this way and 3/4 this way. And then we'll cut this PVC pipe, and then we'll come down to the other third of the way mark and do the same thing. And then we will put the T in, and you'll see it in a minute. It might be hard to visualize right now. And so then that T will point straight down, and that will be the starting point of the hanger. All right? It will all become clear very shortly. And so here's what we end up with. We got our 2 T's in there, and the same. What's important is, right, is that the overall length from here, here to here has not changed. That's the important thing, and it has not changed. So we've made the correct calculations, and so now we're going to do the same thing on this piece right here. Okay, now we have both sets of the start of the brackets in, and now all we need to do is figure out how deep to cut the horizontal components. It's about 6 inches, maybe more like 5.5, so we're just going to have to, well, we don't have to experiment, we can figure it out. So let me do that. I'll be right back. Okay, here comes some math for you. Okay, so we know that this fitting, which is, the same fitting right there, that is 2.5 inches, but we also know that goes in 15/16, and so 2 1/2 minus 15/16 equals 1 11/16. Take my word for it. So 1 11/16, because what I want is for the top edge of this top edge right here, I want that to be level, or pretty close to the top of this. Now I could make it a little shorter, and it wouldn't hurt anything, and in fact, I think I probably will make it just a tad shorter. So we know that whatever we want to make the depth of this from here to wherever we cut it off. So that's what we need to figure out. So let me figure that out, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we know that the total depth of our container is 5 5/8, and so that's what I have marked on this PVC pipe, and that is the distance from here to there. That's 5 5/8. But we also know what? That pipe is going to go up into that fitting 15/16 of an inch. So if we want it to come out perfectly level with the top of this fitting, then all we need to do is add 15/16 of an inch to this figure right here. So if we want to come out level, and I think I'm just trying to think of, unintended consequences and everything. It might be better to set it a little bit lower, like maybe we should actually set it, well, if the top lip is right here, but on the other hand, let's look at this lip here. The lip is already, that's a good 3/8 to 1/2 inch. So I think if the lip is hitting, in here somewhere, but maybe we should lower it a little bit. I don't know. I know what we can do though, because it's just a dry fit. So we don't really need to worry about too much right now. When we go to glue it, that's when we need to worry. So let's go in 5 5/8 plus 15/16, and that gives us 6 and 9/16, right? So we're going to cut the drops on these 6 and 9/16. I think that sounds good. And then, you know, if we think we need to adjust it later, before we glue everything up, that's what we'll do. All right. So I've already got my 2 cross pieces cut. So I just need to cut the drops. So I need 4 of those. All right. See you in a minute. Okay. Not awful, but not great. Where did I go wrong? Well, I went wrong by not taking into account, whoops, these fittings. The height of those fittings. So let me, well, basically, those fittings are 1.5 inches on the outside, and I think all I really need to do, and that's all I need to do. These are 1.5 inches thick. I need to take 1.5 inches off each one of these to make it right. Still, you know, not too shabby, right? Now you can see where I'm going with this, right? Okay, good deal. Okay, now that is much better. I cut 1.5 inches off each one of those, which is the width of, if you wonder where I got that measurement, that is the width of that coupling on the exterior dimensions of it. So now we have, and of course, it's a fairly good fit. I mean, it can't, and of course, it can't slide around much, but especially once you put a few gallons of water in there, it's not going to move at all. So there you go. Savannah's new water table. I think she's going to enjoy it. So now all that's left to do is to glue it up and paint it. And we've already discussed what color paint it's going to be. It's going to be pretty awesome. And the good thing about this design is, you know, she's only 1 year old right now. 1 year old. 1 year old? 1 year old. As she gets a little taller, because honestly, this is like 18 inches tall and it's about up to her armpits right now. But as she gets older, all you have to do to make it taller is to cut these legs and add some more pipe with a coupling. So it's going to be something that she's going to be able to enjoy for several more years. All right, let's get to gluing. Okay, now everything's glued up. You'll notice the purple primer and the orange is kind of, what do they call that actually? They call it cement. Okay, so, sorry I didn't show you, I kind of forgot to do a joint, but basically what you do is, at every joint, like where this goes into here, you coat this with primer and the inside of that with primer, and then you coat the inside of this with cement and the outside of this with cement, and you put it together. And if you can, you twist it a little bit. It's not necessary, but it kind of helps make everything lock in a little tighter. But since this is not like a watertight project here, it's just more structural, it's not that big a deal. So we got that. So I'm going to now prime this thing. Oh, just wanted to, once everything's put together, there you go. And of course, once we put I don't know how many gallons of water that's going to be, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know. But once that gets in there, once that water's in there, this container will not slide around anymore. It will be quite substantial. So I'm pretty happy with it. Now on to the priming and the painting. Okay, so here we are with the nearly finished product. I didn't want to bore you with, you know, tutorials on how to prime and paint something. Just as a reminder though, I did use this Rust-Oleum heavy-duty primer. Rusty metal primer, but you know, primer's primer, it probably has more solids in it or something. And then I used this Krylon Color Max paint, which is supposed to be paint and primer. I do not trust the whole idea of paint plus primer. I don't think there's any way in the world that paint plus primer is better than primer and then 2 coats of paint. Sorry. I'm not a chemist. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. So we've got this thing pretty well coated up. It's nice and dry. I would have finished yesterday, but we had an unexpected thunderstorms. Yeah, so I'm just feeling that, and it's nice and dry. And so, we had a little rain yesterday, obviously. So there we are. That is our finished product. It just has the slightest bit of play in it. And there we go. And so so when we get this to Savannah's house, and then we'll fill this up with water. And of course then we'll leave so that her parents can clean up the mess. That's how it works when you're the grandparents. You get to spoil the children rotten, and then you leave. So I think it's turned out pretty well. I like it. I think she'll like it. And the good thing is that this is something she'll be able to enjoy for several years hence. And that's what makes it all the more special. So we'll have plenty of water table time with her as she grows up until she gets tired of it, probably about the time she's 5 or 6. Okay. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you've enjoyed learning how to cut PVC pipe. I've seen a lot of videos on the internet, and they don't really tell you how to do it. They just kind of say, hey, we bought this PVC pipe, and voila, we have a water table. But I wanted to explain to you exactly how to arrive at your dimensions, and so that you can, if you want to spend this kind of money, honestly, it's rather expensive. But I think if you think about it in cost per year of enjoyment, it's very reasonable. You know, if she enjoys it until she's 5 or 6, what's $10 a year, right? Alrighty. Well, hope you're having a good one. This is Chris with Keeping It Real. We'll see you on the next video.